Thank you, Mark. Ladies and gentlemen, we're joined from Cairo by the international relations expert, Dr. Mohammed Osman. Dr. Osman, welcome to Q News. How significant is Egypt's declaration that displacement of Palestinians through Rafah or elsewhere is a red line? And what message does this send to Israel and the international community?
Thank you for having me, Hani. Egypt, once again, has unequivocally reiterated its historical stance and steadfast stance and position on Gaza, and that is it completely and utterly rejects any attempt to forcefully displace the Palestinians or even voluntarily, quote-unquote, displace them into other countries under any circumstances, as Egypt sees that this will constitute an act of ethnic cleansing that will threaten the existence or the continued existence of the Palestinian cause, because basically what Israel is aiming at is the liquidation of the Palestinian cause by evacuating the rest of historical Palestine from its indigenous Palestinian inhabitants. So as the Egyptian stance comes to reiterate this very fact, this very position, and that Egypt will not allow it, calling it a red line once more. The statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs today stressed that the idea of displacement, whether voluntary or compulsory or forced, is considered a red line by the Egyptian authority. This is something that was reiterated previously in the past by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi at the beginning of this war, and now it's being reiterated once again by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. However, it seems that the international community still isn't able to do what it takes to prevent Israel from attempting to carry out such evil deeds.
Well, what are the possible motives behind Prime Minister Netanyahu's alleged remarks and timing on displacing Palestinians? How might they impact the trajectory of the conflict?
Well, Netanyahu, the announced and the public and the overt goal of this war on Gaza, one of them has become actually to displace the Palestinians out of the Gaza Strip. This is something that has been continuously and repeatedly put forward by the Israelis on more than one occasion in different ways and under different pretexts. And unfortunately, the previous U.S. administration initially supported it and then walked back on its support in this regard. However, the current U.S. administration, the Trump administration, is still committed to the idea of displacing the Palestinians under the guise of the so-called voluntary departure. And what the Israelis are trying to do is that they are trying to create the conditions on the ground that will render life in Gaza impossible by eliminating all the signs of vitality within the Gaza Strip, destroying all features of livelihood. This is what the Israelis are doing, and this seems to be the end game of Prime Minister Netanyahu. And now he is raising this once again on the eve, in the eve of what seems to be the beginning of Israel's assault on Gaza City, which seeks to remove about 600,000 Palestinians from northern Gaza and push them to the already overcrowded southern part of the Strip. And of course, the main aim of that is to deepen and aggravate the humanitarian crisis further and ensure that there is no other option in Gaza but the displacement of its indigenous residents.
Dr. Osman, how effective is the joint Egyptian-Saudi draft resolution that was adopted by the Arab League in shaping a unified Arab position on the Palestinian cause?
It stressed the fact that Egypt is not singing on its own, that Egypt's position is the unified Arab position, that there is an Arab consensus with regards to what Egypt has been advocating over the past almost 2 years. Since the beginning of this catastrophe in Gaza, for several hundred days, people are being subjected to torment, are being butchered on a momentary basis, not even a daily basis. So the Arab stance is the complete rejection of what the Israelis are doing, the complete rejection of displacement, the complete rejection also of any attempts to dilute the two-state solution or trying to find alternatives to the idea of the two-state solution. And of course, it calls upon the Israelis to stop their aggression, to withdraw from Gaza, to reach a ceasefire, and to begin the plan of implementing the plan of reconstruction, which was previously adopted by the Arab Summit, endorsed by the international community at large. The only ones who reject this Arab-Egyptian vision are, of course, Israel and the United States. They stand to sing alone, in this regard. However, of course, since the United States possesses all the means and all the power, unfortunately, we have not been, the Arabs have not been able to substantially place enough pressure on the Israelis, and the international community needs to stand up to its responsibilities and to take more decisive action against Israel to pressure it further.
Yes, well, there is a shared vision for security and stability in the region, but what also is the significance of Egypt and Qatar's renewed coordination in trying to end Israel's military operations in Gaza, especially considering past tensions between the two states?
Well, you see, Hani, Qatar and Egypt both play the main role in the mediation process. Both countries are keen on reaching a ceasefire in Gaza and a detaining exchange deal at this moment. And they play a central role in this, along with the United States. And the United States, of course, even though they are a completely biased mediator, a mediator that has no credibility whatsoever. However, the U.S. is the mediator of necessity, because they have to be there, because they are the only party that is able to face substantial pressure on Israel. So far, Egypt and Qatar have been coordinating their efforts in order to place more pressure on the Israelis to reach a deal. However, of course, these efforts are being continuously undercut by the behavior and the intransigence of the Israelis and the United States. The United States is enabling Israel to avoid any of the consequences of the violations and the continued aggression in Gaza.
Mm-hmm. Given the deepening conflict and continued Israeli military actions, how realistic is it to revive the two-state solution? You've mentioned it earlier now, which Egypt and the Arab League reaffirmed as the only path to peace.
The two-state solution is the only logical exit way from this very long-standing conflict. This has been going on, Hani, for the better part of 8 years right now. And the only way to get this resolved is to reach a true and just solution, which has been formulated and adopted by the international community, by the United Nations, by the texts of international law, and that is the two-state solution, which was even enshrined in the partition plan of the historical Palestine by the United Nations in 1947. It allotted 56% of the land to the Israelis and about 45% to the Palestinians. However, of course, this never saw light, and the Israelis went further and controlled most of the land. Now the Palestinians are willing to even settle for 22% of the land, that is the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. But even that, the Israelis are denying them. The Israelis are continuing with their illegal settlement expansion in the West Bank, their annexation of East Jerusalem, and also their genocide and annihilation of the Gaza Strip. So it seems that they are not really willing to engage in the two-state solution, and they publicly reject it at the moment. However, it is the only answer to the question of sustainable peace. If we want to secure sustainable peace in the region, we have to reach a two-state solution that is conducive to the legitimate Palestinian rights. However, if we do not do that, if the Israelis have their way, we will have a state of continued aggression and instability and warfare in the region, and Israel will never feel secure, and security will always remain a mirage, an illusion that they will never be able to attain through oppression and naked aggression.